thought baby rulers were gonna be safe?
Alright guys, we're gonna go over the first method of integrating all the concepts from the first video into actual training. I'm not gonna spend time going over all those concepts again, so make sure you watch the first video before you watch this one so you know what I'm talking about. For each one of these methods, all the concepts, the progressive overload, the mental and physical limit, the anxiety boredom spectrum, and the learning how to set a new standard with each challenge, all those things are going to bleed into each one of these methods. So let's go ahead and get started. This first method is both the most limited in that it works best when you have movable obstacles, and also the most effective in that you can perfectly control the variables to be exactly what you need. So in this first method, I like to use movable obstacles. You can do this with running pre, strides, plyos, kongs, laches, whatever you want to do. I prefer to go to a rail because with a rail you have limited bail options and it's more taxing on your mind. And then when you go out and train and you have something like a wall or something that you have more bail options, it translates really well. If you've trained in any gyms before, you've probably seen this at least one time where someone will set up like a running pre or something like this. And they'll do a running pre here, they'll take off, do it, and then they'll move the box right here, and then do it, and then they'll move it back, all the way back here. And then all of a sudden they run and they come up here and they run and they go, oh no, can't do it. They come back, they go, I got this, I got this, I got this, and they go again. And they keep getting scared and keep running around and trying to commit over and over and over, but they never actually commit because they've gone beyond their mental limit. So with this method, we don't want to go to a distance we can do and then move like 3 feet to a distance we can't, or we don't want to go to a distance we can do and then move like 3 feet and then do it again, then move like another 3 feet, because we're going to surpass our mental limit and then we're going to get stuck just testing and testing and testing. So what we do want to do is this. I want to take this box, I want to put it somewhere that I can commit from. So say I go here, I run, I do the jump, right? Let's say that was pretty easy for me. I'm going to move the box back a couple inches. So I'll come over here, I'll move it back a couple inches. That was probably actually like 6 inches. And then you're going to do it again, and you're going to slowly move back only 2 or 3 inches at a time. And you move back until you find the point where you start getting scared. And we want it to be at a point where you get scared and you're challenged, but you can still commit. So this is where we start getting to that anxiety boredom spectrum. We want to see you being challenged, but we want you to still be able to commit. Now once you get there, once you get to where you're right on the edge of your limit, I don't want to see you do more than like 3 tests to the rail, no more than 3 test jumps. Once you can get to the level where you have to test more than 3 times, then you've gone too far. So push it up to right at the edge of your limit, and then you're going to drill there. And you're going to drill there for as many reps as you want. I usually like to spend like 10 or 15 minutes at least just drilling that jump. And then you're going to just leave it and come back the next day. And the next day you're going to start off where you left, which is creating a new standard for yourself. So if I got this up to like, say I got up to 10 feet on a running rail pre, the next day after I'm warmed up I want to start at 10 feet. I want to drill it a bunch. I'm probably still going to be a little scared, but I did it yesterday so I can commit. I'm going to drill it a few times and then I'm going to move back maybe 3 inches, so like 10 feet 3 inches. And then this day you're going to drill at 10 feet 3 inches over and over and over. You're going to start pushing it from the anxiety into the spectrum down to the boredom into the spectrum, and then you're going to leave it after you drill it enough times. You're going to come back the next day or the next week if it takes you another week to come to the gym or whatever, and you're going to start at 10-3 now. That's your new standard. So now you start at 10-3, you drill that down to boredom, and then you move it back maybe 3 more inches, 10-6. Now you're at 10-6, you drill that, and you just keep repeating this process, and it takes a lot of patience and it takes time, but over weeks and months you're going to start seeing all of a sudden you're doing like a 16-foot running pre. So even if I'm capable of 16 feet in the beginning, like I can jump from all the way back here, I don't even know if you can see me right now, if I can jump from all the way back here, but I'm too scared to go, it doesn't help me at all. I need to start up here where my mental limit is. So my physical limit could be back there, my mental limit might be up here, so I'm going to start up here and move day by day, week by week, maybe no more, probably 3 to 6 inches, no more than 6 inches a day, I would say. I don't like to do more than 6 inches a day. I noticed that when you do more than 6 inches, it is really taxing on your mind. So I usually move 3 to 6 inches a day, and over time, you'll get all the way up to your physical limit, and then all of a sudden you won't be just running and hopping off this thing and not committing anymore. You'll put it all the way up to your physical limit and you can hit this thing at full sprint. I don't remember exactly which clips I still have, but I'm going to post some clips of me doing this training to the rail in the gym where I usually do it. Some of these clips will be me going maximal effort for the run-up that I had, and then some of them will be sub-maximal where I'm still in the process of closing the gap between my mental and physical limit. I've done this for running precisions, I've done this with Kong precisions, I've done it with double Kongs, usually to a wall because to a rail is really scary. I've done it with stride precisions, and a bunch of different stuff, but I think I have a couple clips of some of those. So I do this a lot with running prees. I noticed doing this with running prees and moving back a couple inches every single day until you're actually at your physical limit where you can't go any further. It has a really strong translation to every other movement I've discovered. The more confident I get with just straight running prees to the rail and maxing out my power on those, the more comfortable I get with everything. It transfers to my Kongs, to my laches, to my strides, to my plyos. And then once or twice a week I also like to switch in Kongs. Like I'll set up a Kong box and I'll go to the rail and I'll move that back a couple inches every single week until I reach my limit with whatever run up I have for that. Like I said, this method is a little bit limited in that it works best when you have movable obstacles, but it's still a good method to understand. And if you get creative, I think you can still find ways to apply this even when you don't have the best setup for it. Another thing I forgot to talk about, so I'm recording this after I already recorded everything else. Thanks to Marcia, we have improved upon this technique where before, when people were scared of their mental limit, so say they were scared at like 10 or 12 feet, when they got scared, they would full sprint to the jump, and they didn't necessarily need full sprint. And then they would keep full sprinting at 12 feet, then 13 feet, then 14 feet, then 15 feet. They would just be full sprint the whole time. A method that we've adapted that has been even more effective is we'll start relatively close to the rail and we'll do only 2 steps. So 1, 2, jump to the rail, and we'll push that incrementally 2 to 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches, 2 to 3 inches until we're maxed out and we can't go anymore. And then once we're maxed out, we'll take 3 steps and then we'll push that further and further and further, a couple inches at a time until we're maxed out there. And then once we are doing 1, 2, 3 steps to the jump and we feel like we can't go any further, then we'll start taking 4 steps and then 5 steps and keep pushing that back until eventually you're just going all out sprint. So what we're discovering with this method is that if we limit the run up and do this incremental overload mentally with a limited run up, that we can get a really strong carryover from sub-maximal effort jumps to maximal effort jumps. Because if I'm used to running really fast because I feel like I need momentum for like a 13.5 foot jump to a rail, and then I discovered that I can do it from only 5 steps. I can just stand here and take off and in 5 steps hit it, and I can get enough power for it, and I have no bail option and can still commit for it. Then when I look at a jump that's like 14 or 15 foot and there's a wall where I have bail option and I have, say, 10 steps, I'm just a lot more in tune with my power. I know how much power I can generate in a certain amount of steps, and I'm much more confident to say, all right, 13.5 steps to a rail with no bail option, I hit that with only 5 steps of run up. Here, I have infinite run up and it's only 14, 15 feet, I'm gonna fly over it. So it just puts you really in tune with the amount of power you can generate, how much speed you can get, and what you're capable of at different run-ups and different distances, and it has a really strong carryover just because you understand your body's capabilities better. Another thing that's important with this method too is I like to use an actual measuring tape on this. I really don't want to advocate people going out with a measuring tape and finding challenges outside and like measuring the distance and making sure you can do it. That's something you should really feel over time. You should be able to look at a jump and know that you can do it or know that you can't do it. But for the purposes of this training method, it works best if you actually have an accurate measurement, because if I just put the box right here today and then I come back tomorrow and let's say I'm at the gym or something, I come back and the box is somewhere else and I have to bring it over here, I don't want to be guessing where I left it off. I want to know exactly where I left off. So say this is probably like 6 feet or something right now. Say I did this at 6 feet. I want to know that when I did this I was like 6 feet, so that when I come back in tomorrow I can draw out the measuring tape and be like, all right, 6 feet, that's where I left off, this is my new standard. And then after I drill it a few times I'm going to move back to exactly 6 feet 3 inches, and then when I come back in here tomorrow I'll know that I left off at 6 feet 3 inches. I don't want to be guessing. So I think using a measuring tape or some type of way to measure is really good with this method, and it's the most effective because you need to be accurate and you need to be calculated. But I would prefer that people don't take that advice as me saying take a measuring tape and go outside and measure all your jumps so you know you can do them. It's really important to be patient with this training too, because if you do what a lot of people do in the gym, which I talked about earlier, where you put a jump down at like 10 feet and then you do it a couple times, then you move it to 12 feet, then you do it a couple times, then move it to 15, you're going to surpass your mental limit, and then you're just going to get stuck testing jumps all day, and then you're going to go home not doing it and being disappointed in yourself. This really takes a lot of patience. This isn't a quick fix on your mental game. It takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of time. You really need to make sure that you start out in a spot where on the anxiety boredom spectrum, you're right here where you have a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress, but not so much that you can't commit. And then you need to drill, say it's at 10 feet and it's a little bit scary for you. You need to drill there until it becomes boring and then move just a couple of inches, because a couple of inches is going to induce more anxiety, more stress. And then you need to drill that down to boredom, then move a couple more inches and drill there. If you do 10 feet and you're right on the anxiety boredom, right on the top of that anxiety boredom line where you're a little bit stressed out, a little bit anxious, a little bit scared, and then you jump to 11 feet, you're probably going to be too scared. You're not going to be able to commit, and it's not going to be effective. So you really need to be patient with this. To bring this method to a close, I want to talk a little bit about how the 4 concepts we went over in the first video specifically apply to this method. So the first concept, progressive overload, this one's pretty easy to figure out. Say we start at 10 feet, and it's a little bit scary for us. We're going to drill there. We're going to move up probably 2 to 3 inches the next day. You could go all the way up to 6 inches, but anything more than that I find usually doesn't work out too well. So 6 inches I like to keep the max. And then you're going to drill there, and then the next day you come in, you're going to do 2 to 3 more inches, then the next day 2 to 3 more inches. So you're progressively overloading your mind every single day by just a couple of inches. And then if you're patient, over time that suddenly turns into a foot, 2 foot, 3 feet, 4 feet, 5 feet, and then you're up to your physical limit. So the second concept is your physical and mental limit. Your physical limit could be way back there, but you're too scared to commit for it, so your mental limit's up here. So again, with progressive overload, because all this bleeds together, you start here, right at the edge of your mental limit, and then you slowly move back until your mental and your physical are the same thing. Eventually your mental limit will be the same as your physical limit, and you'll be going full sprint to this rail. The third concept, the anxiety boredom spectrum. Anxiety up here, boredom down here. We want to stay right in the middle. If we're doing training like this, right up here, this is the boredom side of the spectrum. It's too easy, it doesn't scare me. Back here, even though I physically might be able to do it, this is the anxiety side. I'm too scared. Too much anxiety, too much stress on my mind. I can't commit, I just run and test and test and test, and I never commit for it. So what do? We find this right here, this sweet spot right here. There's a little bit of anxiety, a little bit of stress. I'm a little bit scared, but I can still commit for the jump. And I want to sit here and drill until I push this specific distance down into the boredom category till it's too easy, not challenging. Then I move back, progressively overload, 2 to 3 inches. Now I'm back in the anxiety category. We push on. And then the fourth concept, creating a new standard. If today I train right here, if I started up there and I worked up to here, I found out this is my mental limit, I drill this to boredom. I drill it and drill it and drill it till it's easy. It doesn't challenge me and it's not scary anymore. Then when I come in tomorrow, I don't want to start up there and work up to it again. I don't want to do a bunch of test jumps. I just want to go right into it, put it right back where it is, go straight into the jumps. And then after I do a couple jumps, I drill it a little bit, I'm going to move it back 2 to 3 inches. That's going to be the next standard I try to create. So I move back 2 to 3 inches, I drill there. When I come in tomorrow, I'm going to put it where I left off. So say it was 10 feet right now, and I move back to 10 foot 3 inches. Then tomorrow I'm going to start at 10 feet 3 inches, right? I'm going to start at 10 feet 3 inches. I'm not going to do any test jumps. I'm just going to warm up my body doing whatever I do. And then I'm going to go straight into that 10 foot 3 inch jump. And I'm going to drill it into boredom. And then I'm going to move back a couple more inches. And that's going to be the standard I start at the next day. So that's how the 4 concepts fit into this first method. And hopefully this will help you out in your training. Keep a lookout for the next 2 methods. There's going to be 2 more videos. The next 2 are less dependent on movable obstacles. You don't really need movable obstacles at all for them. You can just do this in your regular training. So if you don't have access to a gym or something like this, then the next 2 might be a little bit more useful for you.